do? Well, what we found in psychology research is the vast majority of decisions that we make on a daily basis are not what we'd call conscious decisions, things that you have sat down and thought through rationally and applied your higher brain power to. In fact, fewer than 15% of all of your decisions will fall in that category. Now, that's going to strike you as odd, and I'm sure there's at least more than one skeptic in the room, because when I first saw it, I doubted it myself, because I'm a smart guy. I like to think that everything I do is intentional, right? We all do. But when we start breaking it down, we realize that there's lots of stuff that falls in that category. We drive cars and we talk on the phone, and we're thinking about the conversation we're having, not what's going on at the road, and all of a sudden we look up, we're at our house, or we're at work. Or maybe you got out on the weekend and were driving the car, intended to go somewhere else, and you pulled into your parking space at work before you realized what had happened. I'm getting a lot of folks nodding. The reason is we do lots of things that we don't apply our conscious brain to. And it's because it takes an incredible amount of energy to break things down consciously. At work, we all have to do this. We've got to build decks, put together speeches, come up with complex reasoning assignments. And when we get done, we are exhausted. Not because we had to dig ditches, but because we had to apply mental energy. So what have we done as humans to come up with this? How did I end up at that restaurant yesterday completely unintentionally? I ended up there because I've let my subconscious brain do the work. We've come up with a series of tricks to allow our subconscious, or preconscious is a better way of putting it, to kind of get away from some of the hokum people have out there about the subconscious, make decisions for us. And we apply that the vast majority of time in our decision making, including what we're going to do with our free time and the purchases that we make. And that's where psychology comes into play. Now, Intermark approaches psychology from a different perspective. We're trying to change people's beliefs and behaviors, and we think there's a very direct tie. But in order to get you to that endpoint, I've got to start somewhere completely different. I've got to start by convincing you that we're fundamentally not rational creatures. And I mean all of us, myself included. The most educated among us here in this room, or the most educated person that you will ever meet, still will make the vast majority of their decisions without using their conscious brain. They make snap decisions. You let your gut make decisions, and you make things using shortcuts. I hope I've at least got a few skeptics in the room, because I'm about to dispel those skeptics. Now, if you had in college an economics class at some point, you saw a chart like this. This is a demand curve. And economists will tell you that as the price of something drops, the more you will sell something. And from a macroeconomic standpoint, that is fundamentally true. But from a rational basis, it has very little to do with truth. Everybody in this room has spent more money for something than they needed to accomplish it. We all bought the cup of Starbucks when we could have gotten a similar cup somewhere else. Well, after we purchased it, we rationalized it because I like the flavor. It was on my way to work or on my way home, or my coworker really likes this flavor. And we came to that conclusion. I'm still getting folks thinking, okay, well, what does this have to do with decision making and how can I affect it? So I'm going to ask you a few other questions. Now, this is a real example, and this is where I'm going to ask for some audience participation. So when I ask questions, feel free to chime in. Now, I've got a picture of two shirts. The shirts are practically identical. They came out of the same factory in Hong Kong. These are real pricing on these real shirts. Now, as you view this, the rational part of you is thinking, okay, well, that makes sense, and I'm going to buy the $65 one because I'm a smart person, right? Well, here are the brands they put on those shirts. Now, who in this room has bought a name brand shirt at some point? Everybody? Yeah, we have. Now, does this make more sense to your conscious brain? Yeah, because all of a sudden there are lots of decision triggers that you're not thinking about that are already pre-embedded in your decision making. Polo's a name brand, it is worth more, therefore I can justify paying more. Even though at its most fundamental level, it's an irrational decision. Now I'm going to throw your brain for a loop. These are the real brands of the shirts. Makes you a little uncomfortable because something that is pre-wired in our brain to be fundamentally true is not true. In fact, we wonder what's wrong here. Now, what's really crazy is I started this example by telling you that these shirts made in the same factory, in the same assembly line in Hong Kong. Everything else is irrelevant. Everything else we've put out there artificially. But you quickly discarded that piece of information and begun to focus on things like brand, because that's where our brain makes most of our decision making. We're looking for shortcuts to quickly get to decisions. The question is, how do we affect those to change people's behaviors? How do we get somebody to go to the zoo when they weren't planning on going that day, or to purchase life insurance when they were planning on not doing anything at all that day?